Violence is a disease. You don't cure it by spreading it to more people. Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to be looking at, Game of Thrones Series 6. That, my friends, is roughly, we've had about 50 hours worth of Game of Thrones. That is an immense amount of television, plot, characterization, all of that good stuff. Now we have reviewed series 1 to 5. I think we've done them individually, so check them out. And we've also reviewed the books as well. So we're still waiting for the next book, George. Come on. They are obviously based on George R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. And we have reviewed the board game as well. Now, there are various board games and card games, but we picked one that was the more complex one, so you can check that out as well. So, Game of Thrones Series 6. Has it lost its magic, or has the magic grown? Game of Thrones, what is the overall setup? Well, I'm going to do the overall rather than the actual series setup because I don't really do spoilers. We must do a show where we do actually do spoilers because it's good to talk in depth about stuff, isn't it, as well? Now, Game of Thrones, the overall setup is that there is a power vacuum. There is one Iron Throne that rules 7 kingdoms. And this isn't really a plot spoiler, but let's just say that the chair becomes vacant. Maybe that's a good way of putting it. And therefore you have these noble houses that are all vying to fill the Iron Throne. They want to be king or queen. And as you can guess, it all kicks off because nobody's going to roll over so easily. So there's a big power struggle, there's lots of war that happens, if I can put it that way. There is also other things to contend with because there's a massive ice wall, and again this isn't really any spoilers, and that is north of Westeros. It all takes place in Westeros, well not all of it takes place in Westeros, but the majority of it takes place on the island of Westeros. They have built this massive ice wall thousands of years ago to keep the wildlings out. Now if you think about England and Scotland, it was kind of like the Romans when they tried to keep the Picts, the Scots, out of England. I don't know how successful they were because obviously they came over the wall and raided. But with this one, the wildlings they're portrayed as meant to be savage. Again, I don't want to give any spoilers away. But there is also a greater threat that threatens all of humanity. And that, my friends, again, should I give any spoilers away? Maybe not. But let's just say it's north of the ice wall. So that's the overall setup. Now, if you have watched my reviews of series 1 to 5, then you do know that I don't give any spoilers away. So the same is going to be here. No spoilers. So let's get into the meat of it. There's 10 episodes, and like previously, they pack a lot into these 10 episodes. There's themes galore because there's many characters. And so when you have many characters, you can obviously explore lots of different themes. But my feeling for this series overall was that one of the main themes was loss of power. We're now getting to the stage where, again, it's difficult not to give any spoilers away, but let's just say there's not that many people vying for the Iron Throne. I'm not going to give anything away there. So many characters have lost and suffered, and certainly loss of power is one of those overall themes. And they explore what it feels like as if there's a loss of power to the nation, so a society, when they lose their leaders, when they lose that authority, what happens to actually society, and also what happens to the individual when they lose power. And that's a really fascinating story to tell when you had somebody that's rose to the top, and you might have it where they've been born into it, so they're privileged. But that can still affect them, obviously, and that's going to affect them differently if they lose power to somebody that's struggled and really fought their way up and kind of, in some respects, might earn the right to rule. And again, they look at that sort of loss and the way that that can affect somebody, and how do you move on when you've been in a certain position and now you're not in a certain position. You're not necessarily king, but you're a great nobleman or noblewoman. And then suddenly your life changes completely on its head and you're nobody, you're kind of cast out, you're on the losing side. So again, it tracks that sort of effect that it has on people there. Which leads nicely onto another main theme, and that's one of the themes that has run all the way through the whole of Game of Thrones, and that is leaders and followers. Leaders don't always have the people in their best interest. And certainly as the series keeps going on, you know, there are certain characters that you just realise, yeah, they're totally in it for themselves and their family, and that's it. They don't really care about the common person. But you do, like in all walks of life, you do have a flip side to that. There are some leaders that genuinely care about their people that they're in charge of, that they've been, you know, given the privilege to kind of look after. And it works both ways, because then you've got followers. Why should somebody follow a leader? Is it, you know, there's got to be something about them. And also it's a contract as well. So in this case, it would be the noble men, noble families, noble women. Their part of the bargain is that they would protect the common person from outsiders, and they would provide them, you know, they would make sure that they're fed and they're clothed, all that type of thing. But then they ask in return that loyalty, so that if there is an attack, that, you know, that they send that, in this case it's men, but, you know, obviously women can fight, but they would then join them if there is an outside attack as well. So you've got that symbiosis, I think the word is, of it's kind of, a leader, to be a leader, needs the followers, and a follower, you know, needs a leader. Why do we need leaders? You need somebody that maybe has a vision. Now, of course, leaders, as I said, could be bad leaders, they could be good leaders. Equally, followers could be bad followers and good followers. And so you've got that uneasy kind of compact that happens between both of them. So that is another one of those main themes. Another theme is justice. So all of these kind of dovetail into each other, because obviously if you have corrupt leaders, then, you know, you're going to start looking at justice, and how is there justice if the person that is being the corrupt person is in charge? So again, you've got what is justice and what is right, what is just and what is right. Who makes the rules? Who makes the law? And it's normally the ones in charge, isn't it? But if they're in it for themselves, they're not going to necessarily, you know, make laws that benefit everybody. They're going to make laws that benefit themselves. And that still goes on today, doesn't it? You would have thought we'd have learnt by now. And of course, different people have different points of view about what is justice. You know, if a thief steals something, then some people would say justice is, well, you chop his arms off, you chop his legs off, or, you know, you stop them from doing that again. Chop a hand off, because that marks them out as a thief. Some people say, well, no, that's a bit barbaric, you know, come on, we're a bit more sophisticated than that. Maybe we should just lock them up, or maybe we should, you know, give them community service, that kind of thing. Or maybe we should, in this case, there is, if you do severe crimes, you can get sent to the wall. You're part of the Night's Watch, and you go to the ice wall, and that's like enforced, being an enforced soldier, if you like. So, you know, your freedom is taken away, and if you desert, then you will just be killed. So there is that whole concept of justice and who makes the laws. And so if you've got different types of justice, all competing for other... So, for example, you've got religious justice, so then you've got, you know, maybe powerful religions that have a, you know, a different way that a lord or a lady might dish out justice. There's the king or queen justice as well. You know, the again, that might be different from local customs and local traditions. And then you've got the rule of law. Where does that sit? Is it the king or queen's law? Is it what they personally say goes? Or is there a council that ultimately the king and queen have to kind of agree with in order for the rule of law to happen? And you've got natural justice, as I was saying, that could be bigger than humankind. That's maybe, I guess, on one level, a spiritual justice. Or even there's mob justice as well. So there are different types of justices that are competing, vying to kind of be the dominant justice, you know, the dominant law, if you like. Which then, you know, leads on to the nature of war. Why do people fight? There are several aspects to war, obviously. And then this series looks more upon the kind of revenge war, the tit-for-tat type war, you know. And certainly when you're dealing with noble families that are in power, it then basically becomes down to, well, you know, one family does a slight to another family, i.e., you know, they might kidnap one of the children, you know, that's maybe a bit harsh, but that kind of happens, you know, then it's like, well, we're not going to stand for that. We're going to, you know, we're going to take revenge. And then they do something to that other family. And then that family then takes more revenge. And so it's like an arms race. It's like, you know, when will it ever end? And you get that immense cycle. Now, if you've got powerful families that are in charge, certainly different charges, different regions, because there's certain, you know, there's several kingdoms that are all vying to be the main kingdom, if you like, the main one in charge, then they're all going to feel like they're in the right. And so who's going to break that? Who is going to then give forgiveness? And that is a very difficult thing. And if you've got these powerful families, then you're going to not just rope in your own family and your own relatives to fight this battle. You're obviously then going to call upon, well, they call upon their bannermen. They call in their armies to then go and fight on behalf of them. And so you're not just involving your own immediate family or even your distant family, you're including whole areas of the population into a big battle that really has nothing to do with them. So again, it looks at that type of aspect to war. Who is going to break the cycle? Which also kind of leads into heritage and racism, because that is, a lot of this is based on where you're born. Which region are you from? You know, are you from the north? Are you from the south? Are you from the east, west, whatever? Which region are you from? And so therefore there's that real strong sense of identity that if you're from a place, then you are right. You know, anyone that's in this area, you know, we're right. But anyone that's an outsider, they're wrong. All their customs are wrong. You know, why should we listen to them? And therefore it becomes that just innate, inborn racism that if you don't really start to think about it, then before you know it, you've got those opinions, but it's just simply because that is the culture, rather than stepping outside of it and thinking, you know what, we are all human. I know it sounds very basic and very naive, but we are all human. Does it really matter if someone's from a different area? And again, I guess because you've got resources that can be finite, people go to war because of resources, and so obviously if they're going into other areas, then you're going to defend your territory, aren't you? And so why, if somebody's attacking your area, why would you want to be friends with them? You know, why shouldn't you hate them for what they've done? So it's a very powerful feeling, that of heritage and belonging, you know, basically nationalism, isn't it? And I think it deals with that in a very kind of subtle way, but it just rumbles along there. It points it out. And at certain points, it rises up to the front of you know, the themes that we're talking about here. And unfortunately, with this, if you've got those ideals inside you, the leaders can start manipulating that. They can use that. You know, why should they come over here and take our land? And then leaders can manipulate the people to do the fighting for them. So again, all these themes just dovetail into each other, because identity, as I mentioned before, identity comes into this as well. And there's a brilliant aspect. Again, I don't really want to give anything away, but there's a physical representation, shall we say, of the metaphysical, i.e., you know, when someone says, oh, you know, when I go out, I put a mask on, they don't really mean they're putting a mask on. It's just they've got a slightly different personality when they're in different situations. And that is to do with identity. And again, there's a kind of more physical representation of this. And it's a brilliant storyline that runs through for a good number of series now. And that is all to do with identity and what it is to be human and what it is to be stripped bare of your identity. And when you lose, so say, for example, a lot of people identify with their job. So when you meet somebody, it's like, yes, I'm an accountant, I'm a YouTube presenter, whatever, you know. They will then, so if they stop doing that, it's like, well, hang on, that's half my identity gone. Who am I? And what vacuum does that leave? And so you've got all of that rumbling along, as well as, you know, when you start to lose, and part of being where you're born is your identity as well. People identify strongly with that. So when things start to change, you can feel very vulnerable, because you feel like you're changing your identity, and that can be very scary. And if things change in your personality, or you're trying to improve yourself and you get rid of a bit of your personality you don't like, well, what fills it? So again, there's a brilliant storyline, you know, and ultimately, the more you strip away the layers that are kind of enforced on you that you don't really know, you know, when you grow up, you know, you're told you're born in a certain area, all of those layers are piled up on you, if you start stripping them back, then maybe then your true identity can be revealed. Maybe. There's sacrifice as well. That runs all the way through this series as well. Why do people sacrifice things, for other people? And what sort of things are they prepared to sacrifice? What are the stakes? Is it small? Are you only prepared to sacrifice something small? Or are you prepared to sacrifice something big for a cause, like your life? Will you give your life for a cause? And ultimately, though, is it all futile? Is sacrificing things in your life for other causes, maybe they're not your cause, but you've joined a cause, is it all just futile? Is it worth the sacrifice? Because maybe it's, too costly a price to pay. So you have sacrifice running all the way through there. So those are lots of themes. But you know what? It doesn't feel like it's heavy. It doesn't feel like it's bogged down. Wow. Series 6 still delivers. Game of Thrones is probably the best fantasy now, I think. It probably beats Lord of the Rings films as well. I'm getting that way now. They're so complex. They're so beautifully filmed. Everything about this is nigh on perfect. The acting is brilliant, as you can imagine if you've seen 1 to 5. There's no let up. It's not getting worse. Obviously, the more hours you need to fill of something, there is that tendency it could get a bit more, a bit loose, a bit baggy. They've gone off the boil. Not with this. It's absolutely beautiful. And then there's the fantasy element. I've not even touched upon the fantasy element of all of this. And that's the beauty of this. There is loads of fantasy now. It started ramping up. Series 1, not so much. Series 2, it ramps up. Series 3. And now it's full-blown fantasy. It's amazing. But the reason why it's amazing is because we care. We care about the characters, we care about the storylines. That's why. So you take all the fantasy element away, it's still a fantastic story. So the background, the backdrop in certain stories and characterization, ultimately that doesn't really matter. You could watch a crime detective story, but as long as it's got good characterization and good story, you're going to enjoy it. The background, obviously you might be drawn, like I'm drawn more to fantasy than any other genre, but it ultimately doesn't matter. And that is the secret to this, because they concentrate on the characterization, the motives, the desires. Everything's believable. Even the fantasy, they've managed to create a world where you believe that it happens. And, I'm continually bowled over. The storylines are complex. There's jeopardy as well. It's not just safely, the hero, yeah, they're the hero, they're going to survive. Not really. Don't want to give too many spoilers away, obviously, as I keep saying, because this is a show you just want to watch. Let it unfold, get in your most comfy chair, maybe your PJs, get a cup of tea or your favourite tipple, because you want to just fully concentrate on this. Just let it wash over you. It's an amazing show. So once again, Game of Thrones, they've pulled it off. It is fantastic. Series 6, check it out. Game of Thrones Series 6. First aired HBO 2016. So yeah, I know, a little bit behind, but I'll let you into a secret. I've already watched Series 7. I know, but most of you probably have as well. Anyway, look at their little faces. That says it all. That says it all. Thank you so much for watching. As I say, we have got other episodes, other series I should say, that cover other Game of Thrones. I believe we've got a Game of Thrones playlist. Maybe we haven't, maybe we have. If we haven't, we shall make one. Until next time, remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're north of the ice wall.